Welcome back. So as concerns around foodborne illnesses grow, the City of Tshwane has announced the activation of a disaster operations center level 2. This is in an effort to arrest the problem. At least 22 children have lost their lives in suspected food poisoning cases across the country, and calls to close spaza shops owned by foreign nationals are amplifying. Tshwane Mayor Dr Nasiphi Moya joins us this evening for a discussion. Mayor, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been, to call it an emotive discussion in our country is really an understatement. Nobody takes easily images that we share of little faces whose lives have been lost because of foodborne illnesses. Talk to us about this disaster operations center that you've set up.
Thank you, Naledi, and good evening to you and the viewers at home. As you say, Naledi, it's not normal that we're losing so many children as the country. And we're losing it with a reason that doesn't make sense to us as adults as to why aren't we clamping this down. So in the city of Tshwane, obviously, as part of Gauteng, the Premier of Gauteng called us a few weeks ago and said whatever efforts that we were putting in dealing with this issue, we must double those efforts. We then agreed on the steps as the Gauteng province, as the municipalities under the Gauteng province. While we were putting that together, obviously, we were also responding to a bylaw that COGTA had given to us as municipalities to, find a way to implement. Then the president told us to, have 21 days to register the spaza shops. Now, this is the sequence of events and the various interventions that have been put to us. But the one that got us to act and to make the decision to activate our disaster management center, it is the decision by the Minister of COGTA where he declared this as a national disaster. Obviously, we had to respond accordingly. So in the city, we then activated our disaster management center, where the whole plan, ladies, that all the expertise, all the resources, everything that we have, we want to coordinate it with an objective that in the city of Tshwane, we don't want a situation where there are more children dying, and it's because we haven't put enough effort on it. So obviously we have our bylaws as the city of Tshwane that we've been implementing. There's a draft bylaw that we are taking to council at the end of the week, but we've got a way in which we've been coordinating ourselves through the integrated bylaw enforcement committee, where we have all our departments. But this the disaster management center is a step further from that, where every day the officials are meeting to look at the plans that we have, reporting on those plans and identifying gaps in terms of the inspections that we are doing in spaza shops and the kind of resources that we are putting in there, because the work that we have done in the past few weeks basically shows that we're dealing not only with the issue of non-compliance of businesses in the city, but we're dealing with a lot of issues with the undocumented foreigners that we found in the city. But every Friday, the City of Tshwane executive, chaired by myself, we will be having the disaster management meetings where we get the reports and take some decisions, because some of the decisions may require policy changes and they may require executive decisions. So that's the step that we have taken as the City of Tshwane to also just show that it can be business as usual in the city.
Yeah, there's an issue that's been raised, for instance, in some reports around, I suppose, a challenge that you're facing around the constitutionality of dealing with this spaza shop issue, and saying that there's a clear, I suppose, effort on your part to exclude foreign nationals. What do you say to that?
So I have said this even to the ministers who tapped me on the shoulder to say, listen, you being, against the spirit of the Constitution by saying you want to exclude foreign nationals from spaza shops. My response to them is that is the city, we've got 22.8% of our own residents that live below the poverty line. We've got 38% of unemployment. And when we're trying to alleviate poverty in the city, we look to certain sectors where we're saying if these can be reserved for locals, we can, go a long way in empowering those residents. So that is the motive. It's got nothing to do with other things. It's just about the empowering of the Tshwane residents by saying it's not all the businesses that are reserved for locals, but we are saying this one, because of its proximity to the people that we are dealing with who are unemployed, it's easier for them to operate in this space. However, in our bylaw that we are taking to council, obviously we have to include the provision that was included in the bylaw that were given by COGTA. But we have made a provision to say, as the City of Tshwane, can we be allowed to reserve a percentage that will be only for locals when it comes to spaza shops. But we also recognize that there was a court judgment that says, particularly with asylum seekers, they must be accommodated. Obviously, that comes with its own requirements. But I have said, myself and the executive, I'm not the only, it's not a Nasiphi stance, it's the stance of the executive of the City of Tshwane, to say for us to deal with the economic empowerment in the city and to alleviate poverty, we need to be intentional about empowering our residents.
Yeah. And if you were to perhaps, put forward an idea of what you want that allocation to be, right, for South Africans, what would that number ideally for you look like?
Between 90 and 95%.
Okay, very interesting. I mean, you've also are I suppose settling into your position as mayor, and you've walked into a metro that has so many challenges. Talk to me about work that's being done to deal with the 6.7 billion rand Eskom debt at the moment. What's the update?
Yeah, so the debt, we've made some significant progress with Eskom with the help of the Minister of Electricity. So we've had some negotiations, because there were two things that a month ago, when we started the conversation with the minister, we said to him, for us to stabilize the finances of the city, we need to control the cash flow and how we're managing our expenditure. And the way we were managing the Eskom account was very reckless, where we pay them, it could be twice a week, random amounts that were not, and also we're paying arrears, interest on arrears that the last month we paid 77 million rand just on the interest on the arrears. And of course, that was not a sustainable way of dealing with our finances. So when we started this conversation, there are two things we agreed on. One, we can look at a payment plan that will also assist us as the city to just have a room to maneuver in building up our cash reserves, which leads up to us having a funded budget, which is our goal. Come the next financial year when we take the draft IDP and budget to the residents of the city. So that's one, which now we are going to court, where we're going to present the plan to the judge, and we'll see what happens at the end of the week. But at least the issue of the payment plan is, we are in the process of resolving that. The second matter was the issue of us convincing the power utility. Yes, there is a payment plan, all good and well, based on our projections. However, what was also important was to talk about the revenue protection with everything that's changing, particularly with how people are now finding alternative power supply. The question then the minister posed to us, how can you assure me that you can sustain the payment, or stick to the payment plan? So that is the work that we are already doing as well, just so that even when we present to the residents the outcomes of these negotiations and whatever the court will certify as the final order between ourselves and Eskom, that it's something that we also need to present to the residents in terms of how do we plan to sustain this. But the negotiations have been going very well. As I said, it was hands on deck on our side as the City of Tshwane, but it helped that the minister and the premier and the MEC of COGTA, they were also supportive in the process.
Yeah, it's difficult to speak to the challenges that Tshwane faces without talking about water, particularly in an area like Hammanskraal. There've been so many promises, shifting timelines. At some point in mid-October, Hammanskraal residents were told that they would have clean running water in their taps by the end of October. We're now at the end of November. What's the update on Hammanskraal and water?
I think I think the last time we would have made an announcement was when we were saying the October deadline has moved to mid-November. Mid-November, the minister led a delegation, which included our executive in the city of Tshwane, to go to the package plant in where the intervention is being implemented. The day of the inspection, obviously, what was clear is that the water is not drinkable as yet. And in our engagement with Magalies and obviously Magalies Water was to say, ideally what we want as the City of Tshwane is that when we launch this project, we should be able to drink the water first before we give it to the residents. Obviously by the 16th of November, when the minister and the delegation were there, that requirement had not been met. So since then, since the inspection of the minister, we can confirm that the Magalies Water, the civil work and the mechanical and the electrical work is done. What is now missing is the flushing of the pipelines. Obviously, you'd understand that those pipes have not been working, the reticulation. Those pipes haven't been working for a while. So there's a lot of work that we needed to do in terms of flushing. You would have seen in a week or 2 weeks ago when there were videos of water that was, on social media that was very dirty. It was as a result of the flushing process. I'm happy to say when we were in Hammanskraal, we had Imbizo in Hammanskraal on Saturday. And the residents, they were showing us the pictures of the water and how clean it is and how they've started to bath and to wash their white clothes with that water. So there has been progress, but the date that we don't have as yet, and we are working obviously with Magalies Water and the Minister of Water and Sanitation, is the date in which the team would have been done with the testing. And that is the biggest milestone for us. And even to the residents, we did say to them, while we have delayed and we postponed deadlines, what is important is that we don't rush the process of purifying the water, because that will create more problems for us. And so we're just waiting now for the teams to finish the purifying process, and then we can announce the date in which then we can now launch the water, and when the communities that will be supplied by this particular, the Babelege Reservoir, then that would be the date that will be announced. But obviously that will also depend on the Water and Sanitation Minister to work with us on that.
Yeah, because Dr. Moya, I think as you'd appreciate that for the residents of Hammanskraal, what they drink coming out of their taps, for them is a matter of life and death, since they did see some of their fellow residents lose their lives to cholera. So we hope for updates as soon as possible. We appreciate your time, Dr. Nasiphi Moya, City of Tshwane Mayor, speaking to us this evening.